Let's get into it. Sold Not For Sale podcast. Coach Colin here. We got Joe Rogan and Gad Saad. I believe that's how you pronounce his name. They're talking about cognitive dissonance, the mental traps people get locked in, the mental gymnastics they do to convince themselves of certain things. And then they get into who is really the president. Then after that clip, we got Tucker Carlson. Oh, and they talk about Speaker of the House Mike Johnson and a interaction he had with Biden. We're going to go deep into that. And then I have a clip from Tucker Carlson, and he's talking to Matt Taibbi, and he's asking Matt Taibbi, what is the biggest question that you would have asked if you had the ability to, if you had the authority to just find out certain information? And he said, who was really the president all this time? So they're both kind of talking about very similar things. And then we're just going to go and dig into what they actually bring up throughout the podcast. All right, let's get right into it. Rogan first, of course.
Flip-flopper. Flip-flopper is a weird one to me because it's like, wait a minute, what do you do when you encounter new information?
That's right.
Don't you change your mind?
Yeah.
Like this idea that someone who's running for office, especially, right? It's always like presidential candidates and Senate candidates.
That you should always be consistent, yeah.
Which is so crazy. Like, shouldn't you learn from new information?
So in behavioral decision-making, in psychology of decision-making, there's a whole field that studies what are the types of cognitive traps that people succumb to precisely to not alter their original position. And Leon Festinger, I don't know if you know, he's the pioneer who developed the theory of cognitive dissonance.
Okay.
And so he has an amazing quote, which I use in one of my earlier books, in The Parasitic Mind, where he basically says the types of mental machinations that the average human being will engage in to make sure that there is cognitive consistency in his mind. Because incoming information that contradicts my anchored position makes me feel icky. So what are the kinds of mental gymnastics I'm going to go through to make sure that everything stays consistent in my mind? Which, as you might imagine, is a big obstacle for me because I'm in the business of administering mind vacuum to people, right? Getting them to think properly. But if the reality is that the architecture of the human mind is not built to change their positions, then I'm up creek.
Well, if you pay attention to X, you will see you are up creek. Because especially liberal people on X, like super hyper liberal people that are unwilling to look at any positive aspects of any sort of Republican ideas or policies, or it's like that's what they're doing. They're doing that 100%.
Albeit there are a few people that have come around, let's say to Trump. No, don't you think?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so a lot of people have. But it's like they had to see, 4 years of an awful administration to go, okay, wait a minute. I think these people are me. I think these people are fully incompetent. I don't think that guy's really the president. I think there's like a bunch of financial institutions and deep state operatives that are involved in this whole thing. Like, and that's when, did you see that interview with Mike Johnson when he was talking about conversations that he had with Biden about liquid natural gas?
I don't think so.
And that Biden had signed an executive order and it limited liquid natural gas.
Oh, and then he said, I didn't do that.
He said, I didn't do it.
That's right.
And so he couldn't get a meeting with Biden. They wouldn't let him have a meeting. It took a year before he got a meeting, and there was a bunch of people in the room in that meeting. And he wanted to be alone with Biden, but Biden kicked everybody out. So they had to listen. So when Biden kicked everybody out, then he was talking to him. And then he found out that Biden didn't even read these executive orders. He was gone, man. We knew he was gone. I said he was gone in 2020.
Yeah.
The presidency ages you faster than radiation. Whatever the happens when you're in that, when you have all that information and all that pressure and like the whole world's watching you and then there's chaos everywhere and probably a bunch of terrifying that most people don't have information on, but you do. And all of a sudden you have this crazy position, like you age like crazy. So he was already gone 4 years ago. So 4 years of getting cooked by being the president, like that poor guy.
So I'll tell you a background story, because we're talking about Trump, and of course he came on your show. I was speaking to one of his senior advisors prior to him agreeing to come on your show, and I was saying, hey, I would love to have President Trump for a chat and so on. He goes, oh, that's fantastic. What would you like to talk about? What angle would you like to do? To pursue? And I said, well, I think that a lot of people have this wrong impression of President Trump. If he was given a long format setting where we can just chat, people would see that he's funny and he's not this ogre. And of course, he came on your show. There's no point coming on my show once he's been on your show. And I think you did exactly that with him. So that a lot of people, several people that I know who hated Trump, after they sort of watched him on your show, they're like, he's kind of cool. And
You definitely can't hate Trump. Well, once you watch something long form and you watch one of the rallies, like once you just watch enough content of Trump, you're just like, oh, this guy's hilarious. Just on a guy level. And then you look at what he wants to do. You look at the problems in the country, what he wants to do, and then look at what they want to do on the left. I don't understand how anybody doesn't come to that conclusion, you know? That's why I've said it in so many episodes on this journey of covering what was going on with Trump and Joe's evolution towards embracing Trump. So many working class people clicked in, from the black community. They just clicked in. They were like, oh, these are all the things I'm actually worried about. And then they turn over here, and then all of a sudden there'd be some leftist lady being like, you're so oppressed and there's nothing you can do and you're not smart enough to get an ID. It was like, whoa, hold on a second. And we're going to keep you poor for as long as we can, but we also have welfare for you. And that's what you're going to, you gravitate towards that because that's, you deserve that. It's like reparations. And we're going to get you reparations. And you're just like, as a black person, you're just like, what the hell's going on? I thought I was just a regular person. They're like, no, you're so much more and so much less. That's literally the mindset of a leftist towards a black person. You are so much more and you are so much less. Please vote for me. Funny enough, Gad Saad, let me tell you something. Or Saad, whatever the name is. He has some mental gymnastics that he does as well. If you watch his last appearance on the JRE, there are some things going on in certain regions of the world where he does a little mental gymnastics to kind of stay consistent with his views. Not going to get into it because YouTube's been coming down hard on me, but just saying, there's quite a bit. But this is Speaker of the House Mike Johnson sitting down with Barry Weiss. Funny enough, I'm playing a Tucker Carlson clip after this because Tucker hates Barry. How about that? I had no idea. He calls her a fake conservative. That's what he calls her, which there's some arguments to be made. Anyway, let's listen to this.
Okay, let's talk.
Okay, obviously slow it down. Okay? You gotta cut me some slack, okay? It's midnight right now.
Talk about Biden for a second.
Yeah.
You have said that he is the worst. I actually want to quote this, make sure I get it right. You have said that he is the worst president in the history of this country. Worse even than James Buchanan?
I didn't say that.
Yes, you did.
No, I didn't say James Buchanan.
No, you didn't say James Buchanan. You said
okay.
Biden is the worst president in the history of the country.
All right.
With him about to leave office.
Yes.
Do you want to revise that, or do you stand by it?
No, I do stand by it, and I say this without any personal animus at all. I mean, in some ways, I actually kind of feel sorry for Joe Biden. I mean, he's in the twilight years of his life. He is not, obviously, has not been in charge for some time, and I know this by personal observation, and now the whole world knows it, and it's been very, very concerning to me over the last, year and a half since I've had this position.
Can you tell us a story when you say personal observation? What kind
well,
of thing did you see?
It's public now because the Wall Street Journal got it and put it on the front page. But January a year ago, almost exactly a year ago, I had been asked. I became Speaker in October 2023, and there were all sorts of big national security concerns and everything going on. And I started requesting a meeting with the president because I'm kind of old school. I'm a constitutional law guy. Speaker of the House should be able to talk to the president, especially in times of great national interest and calamity. But they wouldn't let me meet with him, and his staff kept giving me excuses. This went on for like 8 or 9 weeks. I'm sorry, Mr. Speaker, he doesn't have time. What are you talking about? I'm second in line of the presidency. He has time. I need to talk to him. We had, I can't say the classified parts, but we had some big national concerns at the time that I was losing sleep over. Finally, I just went to the Hill Press Corps and I said, the president is not being allowed to meet with the speaker. There's a problem. So they started putting pressure on him. Long story short, they finally relented. They invited me to the White House. I show up and I realize it's actually an ambush because it's not just me and the president. It's also Kamala Harris, Chuck Schumer, Hakeem, the CIA director, everybody. And then, so I walked in the Oval and, I know what this is. They're going to hotbox the speaker on Ukraine funding. That's what it was. This is probably third week of January. We sit down, we're in the midst of it, and the whole conversation, and I'm going, we don't need to have this conversation. The president reaches over just like this. We're sitting right next to the fireplace in the Oval, and he grabs my arm and he says, the speaker and I just need a couple minutes together. Would y'all just leave us alone? And I looked up on the faces of some of the staff standing around the wall, and they're like, oh, no, he did it. So he called it. He's the commander-in-chief. So everybody leaves, and he and I are standing awkwardly in the middle of the Oval Office right over the rug by that coffee table. And I said, Mr. President, thanks for the moments. This is very important. I got some big national security things I need to talk to you about that I've heard and I think you know, and what do we do? But first, real quickly, Mr. President, can I ask you a question? I cannot answer this from my constituents in Louisiana. Sir, why did you pause LNG exports to Europe? Like, I don't understand, liquefied natural gas is in great demand by our allies. Why would you do that? Because you understand, we just talked about Ukraine. You understand you're fueling Vladimir Putin's war machine because they got to get their gas from him, And he looks at me, stunned with this, and he said, I didn't do that. And I said, Mr. President, yes, you did. It was an executive order, 3 weeks ago. And he goes, no, I didn't do that. And he's arguing with me. I said, Mr. President, respectfully, could I go out here and ask your secretary to print it out? We'll read it together. You definitely did that. And he goes, oh, you talk about natural gas. Yes, sir. He said, no, you misunderstand. He said, what I did is I signed this thing we're gonna conduct a study on the effects of LNG. I said, no, you're not, sir. You paused it. I know. I have the export terminals in my state. I talked to those people this morning. This is doing massive damage to our economy, national security. It occurred to me, Barry, he was not lying to me. He genuinely did not know what he had signed. And I walked out of that meeting with fear and loathing because I thought, we're in serious trouble. Who is running the country? I don't know who put the paper in front of him, but he didn't know.
See, here's the thing with that, right? Great for him to tell us, okay? But why didn't he tell anyone? You know what I mean? And I'm sure some people in the comments can think of some great reasons of why maybe he would have lost his job. I don't know. Whatever. But still, why? That is the president not knowing what he signed. And then you're going to hear in this Tucker clip where they talk about something called auto signing. That's a real thing that was put in. Actually, it might not be in that clip, but within that interview, they talked about something that may have been turned on called auto signing, but who had the authority to turn that on? And if they did turn that on, does that mean the president was that incapable of taking in the executive order, signing it? What was going on there? But again, back to him. Why not tell everybody? Why not turn to everybody and say, guys, people, American people, citizens, I don't think that the president is the one running things right now. I'm very scared for what's going on. I don't know. I mean, you could make the excuse, but then Kamala would have been president. He would have had to step down. Maybe. I don't know. But it's just weird that these people, another person who's great, and I've brought him up before, Senator Mike Lee. He's amazing. Been reading the Constitution since he was 9 years old. Great father, great family, great guy, great senator. Seen him on Tucker Carlson. He's fantastic. But then he even had a story about meeting Biden, and his wife met Biden, and then seconds later he turns around and he doesn't remember meeting her, and he thinks that she works in the White House, and she has to remind him of who he is or who she is, and it's why didn't he say anything? Why didn't they say anything if they knew something was going on? Why did they sit back and allow all those people to say that he was so sharp? Going back to what Gad Saad was talking about, people doing mental gymnastics to stay consistent with their beliefs, or make you stay consistent with what they're trying to push on you. They're trying to form your beliefs. We go back to this whole thing.
And mentally, do you think to continue on even after 2024?
Don, you're asking me this question. Oh my gosh, he's the president of the United States. I can't even keep up with him.
The most difficult part about a meeting with President Biden is preparing for it, because he is sharp, intensely probing, and detail-oriented and focused.
I can testify because I've been working very closely with this president for the past 2 years. I've been knowing him for 30 years. And I'm telling you, this guy's tough. He's smart. He's on his game.
Joe Biden has vision. He has knowledge. He has a strategic thinker.
The president is focused. He's detail-oriented. He's always thinking about the big picture.
He is engaging. He is capable. He has an incredible record as president.
And I'm often with him on foreign trips. He's at the top of his game.
So he has a vision, he has knowledge, he has judgment, he has a strategic thinking.
I met with the president, I don't know, 5 or 6 weeks ago, and he seemed fine to me.
I have complete confidence in the president. I have watched him expertly guide meetings of staff and cabinet members. I could not have more confidence in the president.
I would just tell you that I meet frequently with the president, and every single time I meet with him, he is just fine.
This guy's getting demoted for his lies. He got stripped of his security detail, which cost, I think it was $12 million a year, something like that. He's getting demoted. Pete Hegseth came in and just regulated this guy, and there might be an investigation going into him. But again, I only say that because it's like, all those people you just saw in this clip were all lying. He knew they were lying. They were saying all these things that you just saw at the same time that he knew that wasn't true, and he didn't say anything. I don't know, man. I think that's just as bad as these clips, because he was sitting in silence knowing that the American people were being lied to. I don't know, man. That's what I see with that. I just don't get it. I don't get it. He could have easily said something. Could have went on X if he wanted to. Hey, something's up with the president. Could have said something. Hey, took me a year to get an appointment with the president. When I did, I was ambushed. But now that he's gone and Trump's stepping in, and now Trump's the one that he has to answer to, now he has all these things to say about Biden. I don't know, man. I don't know. Trump likes that guy for some reason, and I couldn't tell you why. Honestly, that right there is the end of it for me. I mean, he already. I mean, go back to this guy. He already was okay with Trump being spied on during his campaign through the FISA Act. He already had a hand in that. You know what I mean? Just, I don't know. I don't get it, man. You know, I know the answer is just going to be he's a rhino, but that goes beyond that. You're sitting back. See, and I guess it is just the fact that he's a rhino, because he's sitting back now and he's looking at everybody being like, huh, man, that Biden, he was no good. It's like, bro, the American people needed to know that. Through some of these lies, Biden's running for president. You're watching Blinken behind the scenes. You're watching these people lie, and you're just sitting back knowing that he's not competent. I don't know, man. I don't know. You're going to hear Tucker Carlson. I'm just moving on now. You're going to hear Tucker Carlson talk about a little bit about Blinken. I wanted to look into Blinken a little bit, but there's nothing that I want to bring. It gets too tinfoily, and, you know, YouTube has an issue with me right now. I don't know what I did, YouTube. Okay? I don't even show people my tinfoil Speedo, YouTube. For some reason, you have an issue with me. Don't worry about me. It's fine. It's fine. You know?
To take the steps necessary. At the same time, we strengthen America's robust sanctions regime on Iran and delivered on President Biden's commitment.
You will forever be known as Bloody Blinken, Secretary of Genocide. You have the blood of hundreds of thousands of innocent people on your hands. We have spent
Thank you. I respect your views. Please allow me to share mine. Thank you.
appeal to your humanity in front of your house. We've written you letters. We've held car rallies. The blood of innocent civilians, of children, is on your hands. We will not forget. We will not forget. We will hold you accountable. We will hold you accountable.
I'm just saying. All I'm saying is, if that was President Trump, he would have been like, leave her. What are you saying? He would have took 20 minutes to dismantle everything she was saying. That's all. I'm a little biased. I love Trump is fantastic, but I think I'm right. He would have broke it down for everybody. He would have been like, hold on a second. You left this lunatic. Hold on a second. No, keep her there. Keep her right there. What are you saying? What innocent people? Oh, he would have broke it down. Egg prices. The only thing they have on Trump right now is the egg prices. They're upset about the price of eggs so far. That seems to be the thing that they're holding over Trump's head. He's done so much. And again, that goes back to the whole thing. I'm just going to jump over to Tucker Carlson now. That goes back to the whole mental gymnastics that the left is doing currently, that in order to stay consistent with their views, they've watched Trump sign over 200 executive orders. They've watched countries say that we want to have good relationships, China. We want to have good relations, Russia. We're ready for peace talks, Ukraine. We're ready for peace talks, Israel, Hamas. Here's your hostages back. Sorry. Greenland, you know what? We're open. Let's have a conversation about perhaps us rolling with you guys and saying forget Denmark. You know what I mean? Justin Trudeau folds, leaves office, you know? And the only thing that the left has to hold on to is like, it's been 7 days and I haven't seen egg prices go down. I thought eggs were supposed to be cheaper. You're a vegan. Why do you care about eggs? What are you talking about? Hey? Check the price of tofu. Update us on the tofu, on the soy milk. Let us know what's going on with the price of that. Don't worry about eggs. You don't buy eggs. Vegans worried about eggs. That's the left. That's the left in a nutshell. They're vegans that are worried about eggs. They're vegans that are worried about beef. Don't worry about the beef. Anyway, Tucker Carlson and Matt Taibbi are talking about, I got the speed right. They're talking about the one question that Matt Taibbi would have liked to ask. Listen to this.
You are, by your nature, a curious person, which is like requirement one for journalism. And like the one thing no one else seems curious about anything, but you are. So can you just go through in no particular order the stories whose endings you'd like to know? Like, what are you curious about as we enter an age of disclosure, and God willing we do? What do you want to know?
So first of all, just to back up, I tried to make a list a couple of days ago.
Oh, did you really?
Yeah, of all the things that I would want to investigate if I were, in that kind of a position to order these kinds of things.
I'm actually going to take notes as you talk because I'm going to follow along at home as this happens. Okay.
But I couldn't finish. There were so many different things that I never got to the end. But I would say that the big ones, there are huge glaring questions, which is unusual. For instance, who was president the last 4 years, especially the last year? I think that's an enormous question.
Tony Blinken.
Do you think it was Blinken?
I think Blinken's so evil, so demonstrably evil and also stupid that I just see his fingerprints everywhere.
Right. Right.
But that's just a pure guess.
That's the problem. We don't really know.
I know that in the last 2 months, Blinken did everything he could to accelerate the war between the United States and Russia, which is should be illegal. I don't know how he got away with that. Nobody said anything about it, but that's a fact. So anyway, sorry.
No, but his State Department was also involved in the censorship stuff too. So,
yes. Who was president?
Who was
Good.
president?
Let's start with the big question.
Yeah, no, I think of all the crimes that are on the table and the potential corruption issues, people signing documents or somehow getting documents signed by an incompetent president or an unfit president has to rank up there with the most serious things that have ever happened in American history, right? So you have to look at what was the process of the White House operation, right? Who was actually running things? We know from a surface point who held the posts, right? So Ron Klain was the chief of staff. We know roughly who else was in Joe Biden's orbit. But what was the schedule? Did he sign things by auto pen because they have this machine that does, and who basically had the power of attorney to turn that on, right? Like these are all questions that we have to get answers to. What was the day-to-day operation of the Biden White House? And again, especially in the last year, because I think, that gets to bigger questions of
who was really making these big foreign policy decisions and who was making decisions about things like, cutting off the Democratic primaries to challengers.
Yes.
Right? These are big party decisions, not necessarily White House decisions. Who decided to kick Biden off the ticket? Biden on July 13th was giving a speech in Detroit, and he's like, I'm running. I mean, he couldn't have been more affirmative about the idea that he was not going to drop out of the race. Within 7 days, he was out of the race. Within 3 days after that Detroit thing, there were stories leaked out in Politico that were basically saying that Nancy Pelosi was going to ask him to, or going to try to pressure him to drop out. But I don't believe that. I think we need to find out exactly what those communications were. I mean, who had the authority to push the president of the United States off his own ticket? Unless he had a sudden change of heart. Do you believe that?
I think it's really obvious that his statement dropping out on Twitter was issued before he knew. I mean, I've heard that. Again, I don't know is the truth, but I've heard that.
It's very conspicuous that when he wanted to say things, he said it on camera, but there were all kinds of things where the wording was much more careful, and that was done on Twitter or in a letter or in a press release. I mean, even the note explaining the pardons, who wrote that, right? It was on Biden's Twitter account. I doubt he's sitting there tweeting.
So it's just a coup. I mean, that's a coup. If you take a sitting president of the United States and force him to drop out, I mean, right?
It's on the table. It has to be because, Jill Biden has been very circumspect in talking about it. She's said these really curious things about how she wants to reevaluate her relationships. I think she was referring to Nancy Pelosi. But what exactly happened in that 1 week period between, the middle of July and the 21st or so? And then what happened in between the 21st and the 22nd or whenever it was when Biden suddenly came out and made Kamala the nominee? Like, how did that happen? Who made that decision?
So that was after the Republican convention.
Yes.
So you had this incredible week or two where Trump gets shot, survives, you have the convention, and Biden drops out. I mean, and as far as I know, I don't think anyone's ever done like a real TikTok on that.
No, there were stories, but they were incredibly incomplete. And this is one of the things where, I was looking at it even from just the professionalism point of view in terms of the New York Times, the Washington Post, all of these papers. How does nobody ask who made the decision to nominate Kamala Harris? How did that happen? How was he kicked off? Or how did he come to that decision? Normally there would be a big show of that, right? There would be, somebody would come out and give an interview to, 60 Minutes and say, well, here's how that happened, right? And whether it was true or not, there would be a grand explanation whenever there's something big that happens with the president. Here they just kind of did a little tweet or a press release, and there were things that were leaked out in newspapers. None of it made any sense. So, they have to get all those communications. And I think that's what was important. There were preservation letters that were sent out by some Senate committees. I hope it captured a lot of this stuff, but we'll see.
Do you have any sense of what the answer is to either one of these questions? Who was functionally operating the Biden administration? And who kicked Biden out? Who made these decisions?
I've only heard theories about this, right? And that's the problem. It's kind of irresponsible for reporters to speculate.
I agree.
We don't know. All we know, we saw little bits and pieces of things. Like there was a really weird moment. You might remember when Biden said something to the effect of, we can't allow Putin to stay in office or whatever it was, right? And people immediately interpreted that as a regime change,
of course,
comment, right? 47 minutes later, the White House comes out with a walk-back clarifying statement saying, you know, our policy towards Russia is unchanged or something ambiguous like that. But there were leaks in the press about what happened there, and there was a remarkable line in one of the stories saying that Biden was allowed to participate in the workshopping of that second statement. How is he not in charge of it, first of all, right? Like, and, you know, they're talking about Jake Sullivan is involved in the process, but that just gives you a little glimpse into this idea of a collective presidency where at best Biden was a participant. So I think we need to know a lot of things about who was actually making those decisions. It might be different in terms of, you know, for each realm of the government, right? Maybe the national security questions were dealt with by one person, then, you know, the foreign policy things by another. I don't know. I mean, we'll see.
And then domestic policy, which doesn't even really exist in this country. It's all national security, like runs everything. But,
right.
Who's doing that? Yeah.
Oh, that was only the first thing in the list, right?
Just got, you know, it's so funny as you say this, and I won't interrupt you anymore, but I just can't. I mean, it's like crazy. You're going through this stuff. This just happened this summer.
Yeah.
And I was there. I mean, I know a lot of the people. I feel like I'm not that informed, but maybe more informed than average because it's my job. I kind of forgot about all this stuff. Like, so much stuff has happened. It's like, it's amazing.
Yeah.
What we have allowed to sort of pass by us without demanding answers.
I mean, I remember being in Russia in the late 90s.
Without demanding answers. Yeah, that's something that people aren't even like leaning towards Trump on. You know, people want to know about the drones. They want to know about all sorts of things. Obviously, JFK, RFK, you know, those files, MLK as well. You know, Trump gave us that as a little bonus on top. He was like, here you go, there's a little MLK for you too. But nobody ever asks about what was going on with Biden. And would Trump even have that information? Or is it just hidden? Because that becomes that's deeper than deep state at that point. Because, well, it's a coup. That's a coup at that point. Because that's just a bunch of individuals who are like, we know what's going on and we're not telling anybody. And if anybody has any questions, we'll just field the answers and we'll just make it seem like the president's too busy. That's crazy. That's crazy. And you know something? While it was happening, people on the left could make the argument that you didn't know what you were talking about. But you know something? It's January 29th, and you can't make that argument anymore because for the past 9 days, we've seen a real president operating. He's been in front of cameras. He's signing the executive orders. He's talking about them as he's signing them. He's getting on the phone with people. He's flying places. Everywhere he flies, he stops. He talks to reporters for 10, sometimes 20 minutes. There's press conferences. He's doing battle with mayors. He's talking with governors. This is just a week. So now you actually know what an actual president looks like. So you can look back at all that and you go, there's no way. At first, yeah. When people were saying that, Joe said he's been saying it since 2020. People had all these smoke screens where they're like, he's always stuttered. What are you talking about? Oh, what do you think? Trump's a spring chicken? There were so many excuses that they had. But now that you see a real president at work, you can look back and be like, oh, that guy wasn't doing the things. He was giving the speeches. He did the debate, you know, but he wasn't really doing that job. You can tell now, you know, and Matt Taibbi brings up that point of auto pen. That's what it's called. You know, I forgot what it was actually called. It's called auto pen. Who had the authority to turn that on if it was turned on? Right? I don't know. You know, Speaker of the House Mike Johnson says he didn't even know the ins and outs of what he was signing. You think he would at least know what the function is of the executive order he's signing. You know what I mean? Even if he was just getting cliff notes, at least he'd know At least the Cliff Notes he would get would be correct, but the Cliff Notes he was getting were incorrect. It's very odd. You know, Joe Rogan always poses the question to his guests, you know, if you could go back in time, you know, where would you go? And he's always like ancient Egypt, and sometimes his friends are like Viking times, or I'd go back, you know, Kid Rock was like, I'd go back to Jesus, and, you know, and pretty soon, as time goes on, people are going to start to answer, I'd go back to when Biden was president. I'd go back to when, if I could be a fly on the wall in the White House when Biden was president and just hear what was going on and how much he was actually doing. Oh, that's going to be a cover up like JFK, guys. That's going to be forever. It's going to be Barron Trump that's going to be like, I'm releasing the Biden files. I told all of you in the memory of my father, the great Donald J. Trump, I'm releasing, oh, he's going to talk just like his dad. I'm releasing all of the Biden files. So who was running the White House? Who's actually running the White House? I've heard for the longest time, everybody's like Obama. But you know what? As you look into Blinken more, look into him more, and it might change your perception of things. I mean, he was around the guy all the time. You know, he was pretty much the guy's shadow. He was the one traveling the world. The way Trump's like, oh, I'm going to go to Russia. Oh, I'm going to go to Ukraine. Blinken was the one doing all that. All of it. It was very odd. You know, and then you had that one meeting where Gavin Newsom was the one meeting up with the Chinese president. It made no sense at all. So I'm starting to think Blinken, you know, had a huge heavy hand in the war, Russia, Ukraine, you know. I'm starting to lean towards him. And then when you look into him, very much a very interesting figure, you know, like I think he's related to the person that was the defending, like it was Epstein's lawyer, and like there's just this weird connection that he has. So I'm starting to lean towards him and all that. I think Obama's important, but I think Blinken was calling the shots, and also because and listen, anything's possible. Yeah, you can have a phone call, you can be orchestrating things from behind the scenes, blah blah blah. You know, phones exist. I get that, but if you look at it, I think Obama was important. And I think he could advise, but I think Blinken was pulling a lot of the levers. I think he was there's always one person who is kind of holding up Weekend at Bernie's, holding up his arm, but there's always another guy that's like under the shoulder and he's making him walk, you know? I think Blinken was that guy in Weekend at Bernie's. And then who got Biden kicked off the ticket? Funny that Matt Taibbi doesn't believe the Nancy Pelosi thing, because I don't know, that was widely reported. Jill very much doesn't like Nancy Pelosi now. She doesn't like Obama. She ignored Obama. Jill Biden. She ignored Obama. Did the same thing to Nancy Pelosi. Did the same thing to Kamala Harris. So does the same thing to Schumer. Wears all red on voting day. Clearly voted for Trump, in my opinion. Super happy when she saw Trump. You haven't seen her that happy. I don't know. To not believe that Nancy Pelosi even had a hand in the whole thing, in talking to him, I don't know. I believe she did. That's just me, though. And of course, Jill was very mad throughout the whole thing. So that kind of, it's all very unanswered. And we don't ask for those answers because a lot of us feel, those of us that are in the know, those of us that walk tall in our tinfoil Speedos, we seem to have the feeling like we know what happened. We know this guy wasn't doing what he was saying, and it was all just, but it's a different thing to get confirmation. You know, I have a good feeling about JFK and that whole thing, but I still want to read the files. I want to know exactly. I want to know, you know. I have a good feeling. Trump's even leaned towards who was involved, but I want to read it myself. I want to actually get a hold of it. Anyways, guys, that's it for this episode. I just wanted to bring you all of that. Tucker Carlson, Joe Rogan on the same wave, and Matt Taibbi all on the same wavelength of who was running this country the whole time. And again, I have to go back to the fact that Now we're seeing Trump in action. You're seeing Trump in action. It's not like Trump is absolutely a Superman. He's just a president. This is what a president does. They get on the phone. They get in front of cameras. They say, "What's your question?" They do long hours. They go from here to there. They meet up with they just do the things. They lead. We're seeing a real leader. And now that we've seen a real leader, you know, it's like when you're in a bad relationship and you don't know. You ever had that? I was in a few bad relationships. You ever in a bad relationship and then all of a sudden you get into a good relationship and you're like, this feels different to me. What's going on here? You know? And you start to realize, you're like, oh, you don't want my phone? Okay. You never want my phone. Oh, it's my privacy. Oh, okay. Certain things start to click off, and then all of a sudden you start realizing, oh, I'm in a good relationship now. Oh, this is like a properly functioning relationship. Oh, I didn't realize. That's what's happening with America right now. And I think everybody's just so elated right now, but eventually those questions do have to be answered. That's what I think, at least. Let me know what you guys think in the comments about who was actually involved with getting him kicked off the ticket, who is actually running things. If you've actually looked into Blinken, let me know that as well. And do you believe that Nancy was involved? Because Matt Taibbi doesn't, and he's actually very well informed on these type of things. But he's not the type of guy to put on a tinfoil Speedo. You know, he's one of those guys. He won't put on the tinfoil Speedo. He's an old school journalist. It's fine. We still love him. Anyways, guys, like, subscribe, turn on the notifications. It helps the channel tremendously. And other than that, I'm out.